business. Item 3 shows that attached to the conference report is a list of prioritised business for this afternoon's session. And item 4, in item 4, the Standing Orders Committee are proposing to reduce the speaking times for this afternoon's session to 4 minutes for movers and 2 minutes for subsequent speakers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Evan. Any questions of the Standing Orders?
Good morning, Conference. Ash Doby, West Midlands, 7 Trent. I'd like to put a question to Standing Orders. Can the Standing Orders Committee advise if we wish to move suspension of Standing Orders 2.3.3 to move Composite GG to between 2:05 and 2:06 this morning, or do we do that? So do we do that now, or after, or the afternoon for the 2:05, which has been headed?
It is a competent motion, and my advice would be is move it at the time you wish the motion to be heard.
Any other questions of the Standing Orders Committee?
Good morning, comrades. We do look bleary-eyed this morning. I'd like to repeat a question that was at first asked yesterday, which I don't believe we had a satisfactory reply. With Standing Orders Committee allowing vital issues to fall off the agenda, such as the Criminal Justice Act, UNISON support, etc., which didn't receive a satisfactory
Excuse me,
answer.
Delegate. We can't hear you up here. I'm ever so sorry. I didn't want to ask you to repeat the question.
I'll start again.
That's better, thanks.
Right. With Standing Orders Committee yesterday, somebody mentioned about allowing vital issues to fall off the agenda. I don't believe that this conference received a very satisfactory answer. Some of the issues mentioned were the Criminal Justice Act and UNISON support. So could Standing Orders give an adequate answer as to why these things were actually been allowed to fall off the agenda? And please do not use the regional priority as an excuse, as it won't really wash.
It's not an excuse conference. It is the regions, the self-organised groups and the NEC that prioritise motions for the agenda, and the Standing Order Committee consistently has said to delegates that have come into the Standing Orders Committee room to try and progress their motion up the agenda that that is the process agreed by conference, and we will not, on our own volition, move items up the agenda. A number of the motions that the delegate has mentioned are actually been prioritised by regions and the self-organised groups and the NEC for this afternoon's business. If conference looks to the order of business, the first order of business is the Sheffield Library dispute.
I didn't mention the Sheffield Library
The
dispute.
second order of business is the Criminal Justice Act.
That was one of them I mentioned, yeah.
And our view is that conference and delegates through the prioritisation process determines the business that conference wants to hear.
Still not really satisfied. I'm sure comrades aren't either. I've got a second point to raise to do with the NEC, actually. Can the NEC ensure that, to members, that private health insurance companies and private health companies do not have access to display slots at next conference? And also, that if they do allow it, can members actually be quite clear in boycotting these private health insurance stalls? Is there a response by NEC?
Well,
President, Bob Reevy, National Executive Council. A question was submitted, a notice given to this a delegate intended to raise it against the Membership Services section of the annual report, and I do have a statement I can make to that. Delegates would note, if they read their conference guide on page 159, that the display area for conference is made up of organisations who Standing Orders Committee have approved as sympathetic to the organisation. We have received a number of complaints about the areas that the delegate there has just mentioned. The National Executive Council at its meeting last Saturday approved a new strategy for the coordination and delivery of the Union's membership services. Over the next year, the new committee who will be looking after that will be having early and urgent discussions with the Standing Orders Committee to make sure that there are no problems occurring at next year's conference similar to the ones that happened this year.
Thanks very much. I'm sure that we'll try and remember that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, John Nobleman, Hackney Local Government. Having had the pleasure of meeting the Standing Orders Committee yesterday, which I had nightmares about last night, what I'd like to ask you, right, if the standing orders are suspended and we take Composite GG, will it be implemented? Because you haven't implemented anything else from the last 2 years, but we'd like to know if standing orders were suspended and we took Composite GG, would it have effect and would it be implemented by the Union?
I don't think the standing orders are competent to answer that question, Delegate. I mean, they don't know whether it's going to be implemented. It's their business to organise the agenda, not to say what's going to happen to it.
Well, President, my question is, right, if you suspend business, what I'm actually saying is, would it have effect? If you're suspending business to take the motion, right, and don't start giving me all this politics, you've been doing it to me all week, right, I want an answer. Will it be implemented by this Union?
Don't know.
You don't know, well.
We haven't voted on it yet. It may be defeated and then we won't have to implement it.
You mean, what you mean, President, is that you hope it will be defeated?
No, don't start that now. Come on, please. Come on, please. When it's voted on and it's put before the NEC, they will have to action anything that's voted on in this conference. It will be voted on.
Right, I've asked a simple question to the Standing Orders Committee. I think that they should have answered, not the President intervening, right?
Well, okay,
and this is what I expect from you. All he had to say is they can't answer this question, right?
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions of the Standing Orders Committee?
Carolyn Sikorski from the Voluntary Organisations Branch, asking a question on the anti-union legislation. On Monday, the Standing Orders Committee told us that if N was passed, then M would fall, only because M was covered by N. We are now told that today, if M, as amended by M1, is passed, then N will fall. Could the Standing Orders please explain why they've changed their position?
We have not changed our position, the motions have.
I've looked very
Sorry, no, I mean, that is the reason. I mean, obviously, if N had been taken first, then if N had been carried, M would fall. In the order of prioritisation, M is being taken first. So if M for mother is carried with the amendment M1, then N Nelly will fall. It's because they're in the reverse order.
I'm sorry, Chair, but the Standing Orders Committee said that it was because N was a wider motion. I've looked very carefully at M as amended by M1, and in fact M as amended by M1 doesn't cover everything that is in N. N calls very specifically for a cross-union campaign for the repeal and non-cooperation with the anti-union laws. There is no mention of that in M, and it's a crucial part of N. I would therefore ask that if the Standing Orders Committee can't accept this at this point, that it's referred back.
If the delegate would like to come up straight after we've finished speaking up here, we'll try and give the detailed explanation on that, because M narrows down. With M1, it actually narrows down considerably the action that is going to be taken. And because it's narrowed it down, the conference has then chosen what sort of action there is. But there is a detailed explanation we can give if you come up. And then if we're wrong, we will change the recommendation. Yeah?
conference, I think the issue should be referred back. It's no good saying that if something is narrow, then a wider that's automatically against a wider resolution. Quite clearly, people accepting a narrow resolution would also be interested in a resolution which went further. So I would urge conference to support hearing both the motions, which have both been prioritised for today. And I would ask it to be referred back for another explanation or hopefully a change in the standing orders position.
Okay, reference back has been moved. All those in favour of the reference back, please show. Those against? That's lost. Next question, please.
Vicky Easton from Leicestershire. Can the Standing Orders Committee please explain why, when yesterday afternoon I submitted a composite, I waited for well over an hour and was told it had been ruled out of order, but nobody from Standing Orders Committee could come along and tell me why it had been ruled out of order?
I mean, if Vicky would like to come up and see us afterwards, we will explain why, but I can explain to conference if conference wishes. The composite from Leicestershire was a composite of motions and amendments to a motion. The normal process that UNISON has adopted for compositing is for motions with motions and amendments with amendments. It would be a new practice for UNISON to composite motions with amendments, and it would have been the first time that that would have happened at National Conference. But we are reviewing, after conference, the processes that we go through. And obviously this will be one of the issues that we will look at in more detail. But it was because it was a one-off and a first one-off that the committee decided not to change policy halfway through a year.
Am I to understand then that if we do anything new, that we're not allowed to do anything new at conference, but can only do things we've done before?
Probably.
I mean, I always hope that
Sorry,
I always hope that conference always does new things. But when it is new in a situation like this, we do have to look at it in detail to consider the implications. And obviously, next year you may have set a trend.
Can you also tell me why nobody had the courtesy to come and tell me this last night, having waited some considerable time?
We were in the Standing Orders Committee room until 6 o'clock. We did have meetings arranged with other delegates from 4:30, and we did have meetings arranged till 6 o'clock, but I apologise if nobody from the Standing Orders Committee, Vicky, come and told you that, and I apologise for that.
Thank you, Delegate. Next question.
Phil Richards from Haringey Officer Branch. We've just heard the Chair of Standing Orders say that no new procedure is introduced during conference. Yesterday, we were told to take a vote on a motion that may be declared illegal after conference.
Yesterday's history. Next question. Yep.
Bill Jeffries from Kirklees, referring to point 4 of the Standing Orders Committee report, which reduces speakers' time this afternoon to 4 and 2 minutes. Now, whilst I agree about the need to expedite proceedings and get through the agenda quickly, if we'd had a properly agendaed conference in the first place, we wouldn't have had to discuss some of these very important issues in the last half day of conference. It is ridiculous to reduce speakers' times to 2 minutes. You cannot expect anyone to put forward a reasonable argument in that amount of time.
Have you got a question?
Yeah, the question is that conference should move to reject point 4 of the Standing Orders Committee report, which reduces speakers' time to 4 and 2 minutes because it does not allow a proper democratic debate.
Yeah. Sure. The sum total of that is he's referring back that point. But if you accept that point, we're going to be in one hell of a trouble before the end of the day. I'm putting it to reference back on point 4, timing. All those in favour, reference back, please show. Those against? Thank you very much. Yeah. Next question.
Alison Wallace, Housing Associations branch. I'm asking a question of the Standing Orders Committee, really, because I'm sure conference will share with me and the family of Joy Gardner the absolute shock and anger that followed yesterday's decision to let the police off that were responsible for her death. Joy Gardner was a tenant of the housing association that I work for.
Oi, just a minute.
Yeah,
You're supposed to be asking questions of the Standing Orders report.
Actually, this is quite an important thing. I've actually submitted a motion, an emergency motion, that I would like to know whether Standing Orders have actually had a chance to consider the motion, whether they could confirm whether it's a competent motion, and because of the seriousness of the press coverage and everything today that's trying to scapegoat her as a complete monster, and that it's okay for the British state to
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yep.
It's going to be heard today or not?
The emergency motion was not submitted until this morning, and the Standing Orders Committee have not considered it, but we are asking the delegate to come up at about 10:30.
Any more questions? No more questions. Conference accepts Standing Orders Report number 8. Show me. Yes. Thank you very much. Those against? No.
Thank you, Conference.
Conference, we're now moving on to the membership development motions as listed in your agenda. Before I do that, I'll call Pat Ingram, Chair of the Services and Development Divisional Committee, to move the report.
President Conference, Pat Ingram, formally moving the section of the report.
Thank you, Pat. We'll take it page by page. Questions, please. Page 18, 19. (20).
Anne House from Luton Branch and also representative of the National Women's Committee. Under the Harassment and Homophobic Working Party, twice this week emergency motions have been placed in front of the Standing Orders Committee and ruled out of order. As a trade union, we are striving to have our employers have a sexual and harassment policy. But following an incident, it's been revealed that UNISON, as an employer, doesn't have a harassment policy. In fact, none of us here, if we're harassed this week, are covered by any policy or redress to this trade union. Is it this group's remit to set this policy? And if it is, why? And if it's not, what are the NEC doing about it?
Pat Ingram. As far as harassment is concerned, you will recall that at last year's conference we passed Motion 143, which required us to bring a report back to next year's conference about developing policies and procedures on harassment. That will be done, that's on track, and as you can see, there is a working party looking into it. As far as procedures with regard to staff are concerned, then I understand that that is being looked at by a joint staff trade union working party.
Sue Salzedo, Leicestershire. Firstly, apologies for not submitting this in advance, but the ruling out of our emergency motion on harassment guidelines left us with no choice but to ask this question. In light of the overwhelming support given to Amendment to Rule 94 yesterday, and in light of the progress reported in Section 3 of the annual report, will the General Secretary give Conference an assurance that current and future cases involving harassment against UNISON staff or members will be dealt with competently and following a consistent procedure? And will he give an undertaking that the NEC will review decisions already made on current cases in this context?
President Conference, Alan Jenkinson, General Secretary, I'm very happy to give those assurances as far as the future is concerned. I am not, however, prepared to give assurances that we will go back on decisions already made.
Rory Heap, Luton Local Government Management Board branch. Following that reply, I'm very concerned that the question has been deliberately misinterpreted. Nobody talked about going back on anything, and what the assurance was asked for was that matters would be reviewed. Can I have that assurance, please?
Matter will be reviewed? You tell me, Alan.
President Conference, the decision that is being referred to was a decision of an appeals committee, and I'm certainly not going to give any assurance that that decision will be reviewed.
Next question.
Alice Sharp, Haringey Officers Branch. I wanted to ask a question on page 29 of the annual report, Equal Opportunities and Staff. I wanted to know, what are the present number of UNISON staff broken down into gender, racial identity, sexual orientation and disability? And also, what, in terms of these groups, are the numbers of staff who took voluntary redundancy in the present round of cuts?
Conference, we had no knowledge of the question being asked, but we will look into it and try and provide an answer for the person who asked the questions.
Philip O'Shea from Birmingham number 1 in West Midlands region. The question is, oh bloody hell, I've lost the paper now. Oh yeah. It's on page 22 on disability members. I must firstly congratulate the electric section for producing a book on disability. But I'm sorry to say UNISON couldn't do one of their own. But I mean, that's life in this world. Also, the other thing is, if you have a look on over the other side, and you've got 95 other resolutions, such as access for the deaf. The question from my branch was that, what has happened to these resolutions? Because they go to our National Disability Conference, and that's it. I mean, you have the same problem here. There's a lot of resolutions have been passed, motions have been passed, and God knows what. And like I've said before, earlier the week, there's a lot of people sit on the art and think it'll go away. But what we are sort of asking is, can there be a better communication from the self-organised groups to the actual lay members in the regions? And when it comes to another question I want to ask is the task force. We've got a task force. They are all about, and they're watching you. And there you make a mistake. But one thing they haven't mentioned is about outside conference. I know we've been hassled with the paper sellers and all that. But if you look at the barriers, I was when I went at the end of conference, I noticed them because I've been using the back door, because I've been used to the back door in and out of conference, because that's again life with disability. Round the back. You can be our friend, but don't come in the front. But the thing is that them barriers are they a fire hazard? If there was ever a fire or anything, and over 2,000 members, bloody hell, there's a lot of you in this room. I never noticed you.
Delegate,
as I was saying, that the
Delegate, I hate to break into your little.
The next question.
Have you got a question for me? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the other one now on page 23. While I'm standing, I'll finish. Can I finish off? Yeah, the question.
Yeah.
Oh, the question is, can the NEC instruct the self-organised groups to have better communication with lay members of the self-organised groups? Right, on page 23 on lesbian and gay members. The question is, it's right down the bottom, UNISON was represented at Stonewall 25 in New York. The question was from my branch, how many delegates went? Because even I want to know that. Because I must honestly say it's a wonderful gravy train to jump on. The thing is that, do we need them? The branch has said, because of the funding and the self-organised groups that are on about the funding, do we need to lavish ourselves with all these international
OK, I'll give you the answer to that very sharply. Yep. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mate, communications.
Right. Wait a minute. Wait till you get your answer on this, will you?
No, on about communication.
Can you wait till you get the answer on this from the President?
Pat, can you tell him how many went to Stonewall?
Sorry? Well, in response to some of his questions, I don't think he's quite finished giving them to me yet. But first of all, I've got no intention of instructing the self-organised groups to do anything. But as far as the questions on the National Disabled Members Conference are concerned, then after that conference in February, there was a policy weekend of the National Disabled Committee, and they discussed motions that were carried at that conference. They're about to put a report on those conference decisions to the NEC, and then they will be sent out in branches. And I'm sure that they will be fully publicised in the UNISON Journal. With regard to Stonewall, New York, this was a request from the National and Lesbian and Gay Committee. A delegation of 4 people went, 3 who were from the committee. One was the other one was the lesbian and gay officer, and the delegation costs were met from the UNISON's international budget.
Thank you, Pat. Page 22, 23, 24.
Again, do I have to say it all again? Philip O'Shea, Birmingham number 1, branch West Midlands. It's on about communications. What I'm again concerned, my branches as well, it's about information on our union. It is our union. I read about the finance situation of our union in the Sun. And we know what the Sun's like, because if you wipe your arse on it, the print sticks on your arse. As I was saying, the thing is, why couldn't the National Executive come clean before the Sun? Why is it, do we have to leave it? Do we have to leave it to other outside hostile media to tell us about our union? That's all I'm asking, because I know there was probably a leak, a mole, and God knows what you want to call it, but somebody must have told the Sun. Unless there's a Sun
Delegate,
news report.
Delegate, are you getting paid for this? Yeah. Can you ask the question, please? I don't want to
the
be.
Question is, can sort of anything like finance and anything important not to go in our forum? I mean, this fortnight forum, and not to go about in the Sun. And also, when it comes down to communications, again, and I mention it again, and I mention it, And
Come on,
even,
Delegate, come on. You've got a question somewhere lurking in there. There's a question.
Yeah.
Will you ask it, please? Yeah.
Yeah, all right. The question is that can we have better communication? And also, can the General Secretary reply to the letters when people write to him?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Yes.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Lee Farrow, Hounslow Local Government Branch. I don't think I can follow that. I'm quite surprised about the lack of anger there is over this section and also over the UMS section. I've been a member of this union now for 12 months and I've been a steward for 9 months, and the delegate that's just spoken says that there wasn't any cover of the financial matters. I don't know, because I've never seen a copy of the bloody magazine. I've never seen a copy of the newsletter, and there's many of the people in my branch that do not receive these publications, despite the fact that we are constantly writing to head office to try and find out what's going on. We did a straw poll before we came to this conference of our branch committee. Over half of them, of 50 stewards, over half of them had not received ballot papers for the NEC election. Now that is a serious communication issue. How many people have got membership cards? I'm a member of the regional committee. A month before I came to conference, they rang up my UNISON branch to tell them that they had no record of me being a member and I couldn't come to conference. That is how disorganised their system is. Now, we're not talking about a union that has got no resources. We've already heard that we take in 9 months £153 million. Now, we're not asking for something impossible. I've got members in my branch that work in IT sections that could set up a database so that people got these communications and they were updated. It is absolutely disgusting, and what I'm formally moving that we refer back this section on communications, because it's not good to say we know there's problems, we're going to sort it out. 2 years you've had to sort it out, and what have you done? Absolutely nothing. And there's still people not receiving important communications. We're at the ridiculous situation before this conference at a mandate meeting where half the stewards hadn't seen the final agenda. And when we rang up to try and get copies, because our stewards hadn't been sent copies of the Focus magazine...
Delegate, with the best will in the world, we had this debate yesterday, actually, to a certain degree.
Well, I'm just urging that you refer back this section.
That section, that's fine, no problem. Yep. Pat? Yep.
Pat Ingram, I can't speak for the UMS system except to say that as far as communications is concerned in this area of the report, it's dealing with the journals that are sent out and the publicity material that you receive, and not the administrative side of UNISON. So I would ask you not to refer it back. I would point out that it is the region's responsibility to complete the UMS and to keep the registers up to date. If your name is on the UMS, you will get your copy of the journal.
Reference back's been moved on the section headed Communications on page 24. All those in favour of reference back, please show. Those against? That is lost. Anything else? Page 24, page 25, page 26, page 27, page 28, page 29. Conference accept that report? Agreed. Show me. All in favour of the report? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. We now move to... Can I just remind, to try and save some time, there's a number of... This afternoon, membership services, we're taking pages 30 to 35. If people could write out their questions or bring their questions to the panel before that, it would be helpful, so as we know where we're going. I move to motion 187, National Executive Committee.
President Conference, Alan Jenkinson moving motion 187 on behalf of the National Executive Council. Conference, you spent a lot of time this week on setting the Union to rights. We talked about the problems and some of the solutions on financing, resourcing and service delivery. Not enough in some people's view, far too much in others. We stress the importance of getting right the funding required by branches so they can organise service, support and represent members. We considered the services, or some of them, that we need to provide at regional and national level and how best to resource our democratic structures. I know, as well as anybody, that the formation of UNISON has not been easy or straightforward. No one is more aware of the challenges we have faced at every level to get our structures up and running, of the changes and upheavals, the financial uncertainties and the cost-cutting consequences as we have tried to achieve a balanced budget, to build a strong financial base to make UNISON stronger and more secure than it was at its birth. When Chairman Mao was asked in the 1960s what he thought about the French Revolution, which of course by that time was some 200 years on, he reportedly thought for a while and then replied with some hesitation that perhaps it was a little bit too early to tell. And asked what he thought about democracy in the United Kingdom, he said he thought it would be a very good idea. Conference, it won't take 200 years for UNISON to prove its mettle or its democracy. In my view, that has already been done. Look at the real achievements, at the real changes on the ground, at the real benefits to our members. We should and must be proud about what we've achieved. We should and must proclaim it from the rooftops. Let's be clear, if we don't go out and proclaim the virtues and benefits of UNISON, no one else will. I am proud to say that we have achieved an unparalleled success in welding together three very different organisations, not by one big shark swallowing the smaller fish, but by mutual concern and building on each other's strengths. In the face of the most unpropitious political climate, I believe we have achieved a fantastic amount. I urge you, never forget that, and don't let it count for nothing. That achievement is down to the hard work, the commitment of thousands of people, lay members and officers. If it were not for the formation of UNISON, we would not be on the brink of an unprecedented campaign of industrial action in the National Health Service. Our future direction is the subject of this motion. We need a hard-headed strategic review which takes a long, hard look at what we've achieved and comes up with positive proposals for future improvements. The review will examine thoroughly branch, regional and national requirements. It will start from the base of members' needs and the real challenges facing branches, regions, service groups and the national organisation as a result. We need to get the finances right, budget setting, monitoring and planning. But we also need to achieve a consensus about our negotiating and campaigning agendas based on the views of our members. We will build on what we have learned from the merger process about branch resources and funding, services and service delivery, recruitment and retention, staff deployment and a host of other matters. There will be a lay members steering group to oversee the review process, appointed by the new NEC and including service group and regional representatives. We have to have a genuine review, open and non-prescriptive, not hijacked by any group's agenda, but genuinely responsive to our 1.3 million members. Conference, the NEC accepts the Strathclyde and Lothian Health Amendment, which is not in conflict with our proposals. We're also accepting Amendment 187.1. However, we have to oppose 187B, in part because last year you, Conference, gave a clear instruction that head office should be confined to premises already owned by the union, and implementation of that instruction is now well advanced. We're also opposing 187.5 because this is a matter for the Welfare Board, not for the NEC. Finally, conference, I do ask for your support so that we can work together to build an even stronger unison. I move.
Move it 18701.
Moss Greenshields, Derbyshire Social Services, APT and C branch, attempting to be brief in the interests of conference business without losing the meaning of the amendment. This is a fairly simple amendment that arises from my branch's situation in Derbyshire as a result of the decisions taken, in my branch's view, on a crisis basis last year. These decisions actually led to the closure of our Derbyshire Regional Sub-Office. That closure directly affected 15 of the 16 branches that operate within Derbyshire County. All these branches relied on the office to assist in the delivery of service to our members, services that enable branches to function effectively and to build workplace organisation. From the use of computer and printing equipment, for recruitment, for branch meeting notifications, stewards meetings, for admin support through to small meeting facilities, all the areas that enable UNISON to be effective in a workplace. Now you can guess from what I'm saying, I'm not talking about large branches. And although these are local government branches, there are other small branches in the region who lack adequate resourcing and resources in different service groups. But the implications for branches go beyond the loss of access to facilities at that level, because the result of severance has been a large reduction in clerical staff at a regional level, leaving a clear imbalance between officers and admin support staff. This in turn has affected our ability to deliver services. It's also affected the ability of our officers to do the job that we as branches demand of them. And our employers do exploit that situation. We must remember that increasing branch retentions to small branches with small incomes and no direct resources doesn't actually solve the problem of providing a comprehensive service to members or developing and maintaining workplace organisation. I'm equally aware that regions are taking greater responsibility in coordinating and developing activities around a whole range of issues. Some are service related, others are much broader issues, like policy motions we've been passing this week, in addition to personal membership advice and assistance. I do believe that where the work is done, the resources must follow. It's no good if regions are unable to fulfil the demands placed in them because resources are held elsewhere. We must have a fair distribution of resources to regions and accessibility to resources for all branches, small as well as big, regardless of service group. Our strength has always lain with our membership, and it's the needs of our membership and our collective membership, now and in the future, that should determine the allocation of resources, not just previous practice. Resourcing of regions must take into account the level and depth of work undertaken there, and should reflect the responsibility that regions have to establish and ensure branches receive equitable treatment. The strategic review, as suggested, offers the opportunity to address and redress any imbalances that currently exist, and should provide a plan for the future that will achieve the integrated and properly resourced union, including at regional level, that members voted for. I hope you'll support this motion.
Any speakers on Amendment 18701? No. All those in favour of Amendment 18701, please show. Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. 187A, please. Move it.
President Conference, Martin O'Leary, Strathclyde, moving 187A. There is, on all the matters of finance and administration, a simple, easy, even cheap speech that can be made from this rostrum, and I'm not going to make it. One of the reasons why we have dealt with comparatively so little serious political and policy business this week is because we have had to spend a substantial amount of time on the finances, on the membership system, on other matters of that kind, because they are fundamental and they are basic, and it is and has been a mess. But what we have achieved during the course of this week is a number of decisions from this conference that help to take us forward. We have been helped in that by the willingness of the NEC and the platform to come halfway to meet branches that are trying to make contributions to solving the problem, and I believe the General Secretary's speech in moving this motion was another step in that direction. The problems are basic and require to be solved. We need a review that includes representation from service groups and from the regions, because the people who are on the receiving end of our systems have got to be heard in that review. It is not about just designing something that is administratively efficient from the point of view of London and the centre. It is about making sure it caters to the needs of the members. The aspects of this amendment that relate to membership records and branch finances you have already dealt with. I want to emphasise the importance of the points in the amendment that deal with staffing. It is crucial that we deal with staffing issues properly and sensitively, that we have regard and we draw attention to it, to issues like gender balance within the staffing group, and that resources go where they are needed. The mover of 1871 is absolutely right. There is an imbalance between the centre and the regions, and it requires to be addressed. And finally, wherever possible, the services we deliver should be in-house. Experience teaches us that that works best, and that is certainly so in terms of education, and that is certainly so in terms of legal services. That's where it should stay, that's where it's most responsive, that's where it's most efficient, that, frankly, is also where it is most cost-effective. I believe that when we conclude this debate, we will have made substantial progress during the course of this week in resolving some of our basic problems, and it will make it easier for us to go ahead on the matters of policy and the matters of service conditions that this trade union needs to pursue in the future. I ask you to support all the amendments and the main motion. Thank you very much.
Any speakers on A?
Stephen Smiley, Hamilton number 1, General, speaking in support of the amendment. The NEC are proposing that we have a strategic review of our finances and resources, and the amendment seeks to lay down the kind of guidelines and principles which that review should be based upon. I think one of the things that is absolutely essential that the review is based upon is an understanding of some of the things that have went on over the past year. Now, there have been some references throughout this week to what has happened over the past year, in particular in relation to the finances, and it's important that we try and understand what has been going on. We all understood in the merger of 3 unions that financial control and management was going to be absolutely essential, and that was reflected in decisions that were taken at last year's conference. And therefore it is in this context, this understanding that effective financial management was essential, that it defies belief that we could have went through the kind of shenanigans that we did over the past year. For long periods it seemed that no one in the branches or the regions could find out what was going on with our money. It was apparently NEC members couldn't find out what was going on with the finances. Even members of the Finance and Admin Division of the NEC didn't seem to know exactly what was going on. This created a situation where our finances were the subject of rumours and press reports about chaos and bankruptcy and all the rest of it. A union which allows that kind of situation to develop is a union which loses the confidence of its members and its ability to control and run its own affairs. It opens it up to ridicule and it brings it into disrepute. We tried over the past months, and indeed even during the course of this week, to try and find out exactly what is going on, and a very blurred picture has emerged, which to my mind no one has been able to fully clear up. But it would appear that the NEC were being asked to make decisions based upon information which was then revised a matter of days later, and subcommittees were asked to overturn those decisions on information which a few weeks later was changed and proved to be incorrect again. One week there was a crisis, next week the crisis was off, the following week it was back on. That's no way to run a manage, never mind a serious trade union. It's clear there has not been over the past year effective financial management necessary to control the situation. At the end of December, almost at the end of the accounting period, the NEC believed that they were heading for a deficit of £22 million. And it wasn't until March, the end of March, when they learned it was only £12 million or thereabouts. This chaos has led to the NEC being unable to present proper proposals in relation to subs, which they would wanted to do at this conference because they run out of time to meet the arrangements for conference, and the consequences of that we'll just have to wait and see. It's now June, and as far as I've been told by a number of NEC members, the NEC has not been given a full up-to-date report on the financial position in 1995, and I'm concerned that some of the lessons of last year haven't been learned. Now, we're not saying that the NEC acted in anything but good faith. We believe they acted in good faith on the basis of the information that was laid before them, but we've been told that they have been misled, misinformed by senior officers of this trade union, and we need to know if that is going to continue. If there's to be a strategic review, then we have to ensure that part of that review includes a review of how the information which senior officers present to the NEC is controllable, and that that information and the senior officers presenting it is accountable. And that must include accountable to the regions and to the branches. We should be given regular updates of what the financial position is of our union, and indeed quarterly reports would be in order to the regions to ensure that the members have full confidence in the ability of our leadership to control the financial situation and make sure that the union is in good order. I would ask you to support the strategic review, but support the amendments and ensure that senior officers and the NEC are held accountable to this union for the control of the finances. Thank you.
Platform Speaker.
James Urquhart, National Executive, supporting the amendment and thanking Strathclyde for the spirit in which that amendment was moved. I'm sorry that we now seem to be going backwards again, because this motion and these amendments are about looking forward. And I think by Thursday we're all a bit fed up with looking backwards at the finances, because I'd remind you there was a presentation on the finances on Monday night. None of this stuff we've just heard was raised then. There was an incredibly full account on the financial accounts given to you on Tuesday. Again, none of these questions were raised then. And I find that sad, because what we're now doing is looking backwards. It's true that NEC members had a struggle this year. I'm sorry if people have heard this before, but the analogy is quite appropriate. If we'd been 3 building societies coming together, yes, we would have had all the financial systems in place on day one. But we, all of us, didn't concentrate on that. We concentrated on what kind of union we were going to build politically. And when you look at the final reports, that was our emphasis. It was about structures, it was about principles, it was about the politics of the new union. And yes, there has been a struggle to bring the administrative systems together. And yes, information has changed. And not least, I don't want to labour this because it's like bashing people and we all start bashing each other again, but yes, okay, there was all the problem about how much income we had, and we've heard it all. about what the centre did wrong, what the branches did wrong. Let's agree that there have been problems. But I do want to refute the impression that there hasn't been lay control this year, because I think there's been massive lay control. I think lay members have struggled at times with the inadequate information, but there's been a partnership with the officers. And the idea of some sort of conspiracy to deprive people of information, it's completely wrong. And I think it's sad that we're looking at this sort of thing in that way. Can I give an assurance from the NEC that it won't be reached, but the amendments 246.2, which send quarterly reports to the regions, yes, that will be honoured by the NEC. Just because we don't reach the motion doesn't mean that it won't be honoured. Can I just finish on this point? For some members, it's been a lonely process. The Chair of Staff Negotiations, Brenda Hudson, at times was taking horrendous decisions. I think she had made a massive contribution in lay control over this year, and I just hope that people that have chosen to fill her shoes can make such a big contribution.
Any other speakers? 187A? No? All in favour of 187A, please show. NEC is supporting. Against? That is carried. Excuse me. 187B.
Chair Conference, John Stevenson, Lothian Region Branch, moving 187B. Quite a constructive debate so far, I think, in the acceptance of the NEC of most of what was in our original amendment that went on to the Strathclyde and Lothian Health one. It was a very positive way forward, I think. I think it's unfortunate they haven't accepted this one bit, and it is unfortunate we've had to step outside of it with this one bit, which is asking to increase efficiency that attempts should be made to bring together national staff in one or more locations around Maplewood Place, the current headquarters. We believe that as part of any sensible review of outstructures, one of the issues that must be addressed is where your national staff and your national resources are based. And all this amendment asks is that attempts are made to group people and functions around the current HQ. Now, any organisation will tell you the only way to ensure effective communication and efficient use of the time of busy people is to make sure they work as closely as possible together. And that allows for quick and efficient exchange of ideas, creativity maybe even, and the building, but most importantly, the building of UNISON as one single identity. Because we can't afford to continue a union that has a number of heads on the one big diverse body, because that will always lead to tensions, it will always lead to pulling in different directions, and eventually, if not now, will lead to confusion, lead to a separating and duplicating the functions with all the expense that that entails, and the risk of different cultures building up in what should be one union with one united purpose. Now, I know there's new technology, and I know people can link back and forward at distances, but when there's a problem, what people want to do is face-to-face with each other. They want to argue with each other, they want to exchange ideas. When something arises, then they say, well, Jeannie will know the answer to this. I'll just log on, download some data to her and see if we can interface. Or maybe they do these days, I don't know. It's bad for morale to be all over the place, and it's an inefficient use of resources. Now, Alan Jenkinson, when moving this, was saying that they couldn't do this. They couldn't do this because last year we told them to use their existing buildings. What we told them last year was not to build a new super UNISON building at millions and millions of pounds. We didn't say you don't do anything at all if you can't have that building. And I hope that their opposition for this is not based on a huff because we wouldn't give them the new building last year. It's not based on any internal wish to remain separate structures, but that it is based on having misunderstood what we're trying to put forward in this amendment. And I hope that on reflection the NEC will will look at grouping these structures together and making sure we have a more efficient, more responsive union, but most of all, a united union at the head, not one that's split up into several groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers on Amendment B? Platform wants to speak. Yep.
Thank you, President. Debbie Long, National Executive Council, and explaining to conference the reason why we are opposing the Amendment B. Last year, conference, we were instructed to make the best use of existing accommodation by ensuring that split site functions were brought together in single locations wherever possible. an acquisition of new premises was ruled out, and the expenditure also on this moves had to take into account the state of UNISON's finances. Now, although the NEC opposed the motion last year, it has implemented it effectively and faithfully. And at this point in time, the work is going on to bring ourselves together around Woolwich and Mabledon Place. Now, in moving the amendment, it was suggested that things should be brought together around the headquarters. Well, what the NEC has been quite careful to do is ensure that the two buildings that have been used to house the functions brought together in the way that conference instructed us to, was that there wasn't an inequality between the two offices, but there was a rationalisation based on function and providing effective services. And the NEC believes that this amendment boxes us in to an area, a particular area in London, which at the end of a strategic review such as we are proposing, may not be the most effective way to deliver services from a head office or head offices. And it is for that reason that the NEC is opposing this amendment.
Thank you.
President, Conference, Robin Hunter, Tayside Health Branch, speaking in favour of Amendment 187B. First of all, to pick up something that the platform speaker said, the amendment doesn't actually say bring together the national staff at headquarters. It says around Mabledon Place. There is no suggestion in the wording that Mabledon Place has got a different status from Woolwich. But the second point I wish to emphasise, as the mover of the amendment did, is that references to last year's motion are no longer particularly relevant. What we were talking about last year was disposing of Mabledon Place and acquiring our own Canary Wharf. Bringing the staff together in or around the biggest of the existing headquarters buildings is a totally different idea, and to seek to apply last year's decision in a very literal, almost legalistic way to the current proposition doesn't seem to me to make much logical sense. Indeed, it seems to suggest that there's some kind of hidden agenda. And, of course, the mere fact that the agenda is hidden means that it's unpalatable. Perish the thought, that couldn't be so. It's the NEC. The reality must be they haven't really thought it through fully. They haven't recognised, as Lothian Region have, that it's a very common sense thing to do, to seek to bring your national staff together in one location, if possible. And that's the final and most important point I want to make. There is no commitment. The amendment says attempts should be made. Please vote for it and let us make the attempts.
Point of order.
Mike Thirst, Harrogate General, asking the question be put.
Do you want the question put? Show me. Those against? Will it be put? All in favour? You want to reply? No? Oh, sorry.
President Conference, Alan Jenkinson. At the last hour of last year's conference, I thought I made a particularly brilliant speech on the issue of the total desirability, necessity for a single unified UNISON head office. Such was the brilliance of that speech that I think I lost the vote virtually unanimously. So, like most other speakers in this debate, I certainly don't want to go backwards. But I do want to say to John Stevenson that the resolution last year was very precise not only in rejecting the concept immediately of a unified head office, but it said, and I quote, "In the meantime, conference," that's you, "instructs the NEC to make the best use of existing accommodation, including the disposal of any surplus accommodation, by ensuring that distinct functions presently organised across split sites are brought together in single locations wherever possible." That conference is precisely what we have been trying to do. And can I say that as part of that process, reducing from the previous 4 sites to 2 sites, it has had very encouraging effects as far as the culture of UNISON is concerned, certainly the culture of the staff. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of my colleagues have moved from Woolwich to Maybelline Place, and the process is now taking place in reverse, and I think that is all very good for the future of this union. Can I just make one final point? I mean, Maybelline Place, and I've worked there for years. Number one, Maybelline Place is a very small street in a very large city. I do recognise that in terms of communications, particularly rail communications, it is an excellent kind of location to be in. But can I say that by the end of 5 years, and people are calling out for devolution of staffing resources to regions, it may be that it is no longer appropriate. Can I make this final point? I don't know how many of you here know number 1 Maybelline Place and know the area, but can I say to you that it's very adjacent to King's Cross, which is one of the most violent, vicious, drug-ridden, prostitution-ridden parts of central London. And not only my staff, particularly my female colleagues, but the staff of the adjacent Camden Town Hall and others do not like walking the streets of that area after dark. So all I say that if in a year or two's time we had the money and it was propitious so to do, it may be that we may want to move out of Maybelline Place. I do ask you to reject this amendment.
The National Executive Committee are opposing Amendment 187B. All in favour of 187B, please show. Those against? It is lost. Can I call 18705, please?
Phil Richards, Haringey Officer Branch, moving Amendment 187.5. Conference. There are many elderly members who, because of their low salaries when working, are in receipt of meagre superannuation payments, which are not enough to live on, but just that little bit too much to be eligible for government statutory payments. They therefore have great difficulty making ends meet. In the past, provided they met the criteria and depending on their circumstances, the Welfare Fund Committee granted them a weekly sum. The fund also paid for their telephone rental, television licence and house contents insurance. On their birthdays, they received a small grant, and the same at Christmas, together with a hamper. But with the advent of UNISON, the latter was changed to a sum of money. The Welfare Management Board has now decided that these payments have become inappropriate and maintain that they have merely become absorbed into the beneficiary's income and are not being used to meet a definite and identifiable need. They decided to phase out these grants and have now stopped giving birthday and Christmas grants, and the money in lieu of the hamper, and for the last period have reduced the weekly grant by half, with a view to cancelling it completely. As a result of this policy, at the last period, one of our members received the sum of £1 a week and another £1.50 per week. The welfare officers and secretaries review their cases regularly on behalf of the welfare committees and complete a report on every person who receives assistance, which is sent to the welfare committees. They know what this little extra income means to the recipients, Most of them are well in their late 70s and 80s. With the increases in cost of living, especially the VAT on heating, these members will be hard hit to manage. They know what it is like to struggle and are the types who will save up before buying anything. These grants are often the difference between being able to meet their commitments and going without to ensure that they meet those commitments. Occasionally, because of the grants, they are able to buy some of the little extras that most of us consider normal purchases, such as fruit, sweets, or they save the money and buy a coat or a pair of shoes. To them, their bills are their identifiable needs, and to be able to meet them gives these people a little bit of independence. Conference, I would ask you, when listening to the platform speaker, to think of him or her as Unison's equivalent of Peter Lilly or Virginia Bottomley, selling you a line to justify their decisions. Unison Welfare proclaims it is the heart of the Union. Let us ensure that it remains that, and please support this amendment.
Judy Asquith from Stockton-on-Tees branch, speaking against this amendment and feeling strongly enough for this to be the first time that I've spoken at conference. I'm speaking against it not because I believe that elderly members should be left destitute, but because weekly grants and Christmas hampers are not the way to help people. This is an ex-Nalgo thing, and even ex-Nalgo is getting rid of the system because it doesn't work. It does not help people in the way that they need to be helped. In the Northern region, we visited every recipient of the grants to tell them of the Management Board's decision. We got very different responses from different people. Several said that they hadn't actually needed the money for a long time, but thanks very much for giving them it. One person had been receiving it since 1930, and we actually have continued giving her the grant. One lady was very, very irate. She was saving it towards her grandson's private education. She was not using it for welfare purposes. But we did have some people who most definitely did need money, and they definitely needed a lot more than £1 a month or a Christmas hamper. One man, 36, these are not all elderly people that are getting these grants, has MS, he's a wheelchair user and he's incontinent. His 80-year-old mother was using the £3 a week grant to pay the laundrette bills. We went to visit him, and actually we bought him a washing machine, we bought him a dryer. His cooker wasn't working. We got the electrician to come in to have a look at his cooker. The electrician said that it wasn't capable of repair. We bought him a new cooker. We also paid towards his phone and his fuel bills. That is a lot more use to him than £3 or £4 a week. Another person was living in one room with a portable gas fire and one chair. She was using her grant to pay for the bottles of gas, which were extremely expensive. We actually helped her to get gas put into the house. We bought her a new gas fire. We also bought her some new furniture. She could not buy that with £1 or £2 or £5 a week. The grants really, they're a cop-out. It's very easy, give somebody £5 a week, give somebody £1 a week, forget about them. But they're not the answer to welfare. We've got to go out, we've got to talk to everybody who needs help, everybody that's brought to our attention. And it's no good sending somebody a Christmas hamper if they haven't even got a cooker that works to cook the turkey on. So I ask you to vote against this amendment.
Point of order.
Keith Davis, Malton County, moving the question be put.
All in favour, question be put. Those against? The NEC is opposing Amendment 18705. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. Those against? It is lost. We're now debating the substantive motion 187. Any speakers?
Matthew Pulling, Herts County Local Government Unison Branch. At this conference, we have a conference slogan of building an even stronger union. Often these slogans are meaningless, but to me, this is the basic concept as to the reason why we are all here this week. I believe that we are part of a proud and strong union. But what is the nature of that strength? The nature of that strength is each and every single one of you sitting in this conference hall. It's each and every single steward who is willing to use their skills to represent the fears, hopes and desires of their members, often against overwhelming odds, often against hostility. But above all, the very strength of this union is on the basis of our very diversity. The very diversity of each and every single member. In relation to that particular strength, it is this that the NEC needs to keep in mind when actually conducting this particular review. Their strength is the strength of each of the members that are actually a part of this union. Their strength is the very strength of all of us here today. And when conducting that review, we need to keep in mind that this union will become a stronger union only on the basis of keeping that firmly in the fronts of our minds, that our union is only strong as the members that it represents. Thank you.
Point of order. They've done a deal.
Yes, thank you very much for not asking the question we put yet. It's just Elena Davis and Ismond Branch, and I think there's one very important resource that Unison has that we've been ignoring to a certain extent, and that's the resources of the staff that we have within the union. Over the last 12 months, I've been rather ashamed at the way that the staff have been dealt with, at the lack of notice they've been given about various issues that have been affecting them. And I was particularly concerned at the response made by the Regional Secretary of the Cymru-Wales region, Derek Gregory. When at Regional Council recently, he was asked if the staff that had taken voluntary severance had been thanked for their work. And his response was something on the lines of, they get thanked at the end of every month with their paycheck. I want to disassociate my branch from that comment, and I'm sure the rest of my colleagues in Wales would want to disassociate themselves from those points of view. And we'd just like to say to the staff that have gone on voluntary severance, best wishes to you. It was a difficult decision for you to take. It wasn't easy for us to let you go, but if you had stayed, Unison would have been very embarrassed by having to look at compulsory redundancies. So you've saved the union's face. For the staff that are remaining within Unison, please stick with us. We're not the best, but we're not the worst. We're trying. The grassroots membership actually appreciate the staff. It's one of our best resources, and it's one that we should be looking after far better than we have over the last 12 months. So when the NEC is looking at this motion, will it please consider, ultimately, that we are nowhere without the staff supporting us? Thanks.
Point of order.
Number one branch, I think it's academic, but moving at the question be put.
I was just going to do it. Right. All those in favour of 187 as amended, please show. Those against? That is carried unanimously. Can I call 189? Move it, please.
Dawn Patterson, Gloucestershire County Branch. Speaking on motion 189, service standards in Unison. Conference. This motion comes from an ordinary member of our branch who had a complicated query over pension entitlement. Having paid his union sub for years, he decided to do the obvious thing and contact Unison for advice. Several weeks and several phone calls later, not only did he not have the answer to his problem, but he didn't even know who he was supposed to be dealing with. This might ring a bell with branch secretaries and other officers. they might find this a similar scenario. Not only do phone calls go unanswered, but letters often produce no response. The officer then has the embarrassing task of making excuses to members on behalf of headquarters as to why their questions cannot be answered. Not a very good advertisement for UNISON. No wonder our members came to our AGM with this motion. The word service standards may put some delegates off this motion, especially if they had arguments with their employers about silly and unreasonable service standards. But we do not think these standards are too much to ask for a union that is supposed to take pride in services it offers to our members. Nor do we think that this motion would put too much of a burden on headquarters. After all, if queries were dealt with promptly, then time would not be wasted in dealing with irate members and officers who want to know when they will get information or action they've asked for. The less time headquarters spends dealing with complaints, the more time can be spent in providing service. It's all a matter of organisation. We are happy to accept the amendments, although I am sure the NEC will use them as to attack the main motion. Don't let the NEC deny us of this. Our members and our services we pay for, which we are promised. Please support this motion.
Thank you. Move of Amendment 01.
Roger Spray, Exeter Health Branch, moving Amendment 189.1. Conference, I'm pleased that the mover of the motion has accepted our amendment, because I'm sure you'll all agree that basically the problems that the mover outlined at national level, we also have mirrored at regional level. Conference, it's absolutely essential that the service standards in UNISON are improved and that they must be the same throughout the union. Therefore, we put this amendment. It is essential, if the membership is to have confidence in the union, that you pass these motions and amendments, because after all, we are only asking for common decency. I'm not sure what the arguments for opposition are going to be, but whatever they are, you can't believe them, because all we are asking for is common decency in replying to problems from our members at branch level. Please support the motion and the amendments. Thank you.
Any speakers to Amendment 01? Platform.
Chrissy Carnoush, National Executive, proposing motion 189 and 189.1, which has the effect of extending these proposals to regional staff. Conference, there has been a number of valid points made by the proposers of the motion and the amendment. We have particular concerns about some of the aspects that are contained in the method of looking at this proposal, and it's not because we don't believe that members are not expected or it should have a service standards, but the methods being proposed we find unacceptable. We have said in 187 that the NEC will conduct a strategic review, and that will look, one of the main points that would focus upon would be the standards of services available within the resources we have. We would urge the conference to look very closely at this motion. It's superficially attractive, but we see little point in investigating some of these proposals when we have fundamental objections to major parts of them. Running through this motion is a theme that is tinged with the Citizens' Charter approach. It proposes we consider timescales to be applied in each and every case, whatever the issue. As long as you meet the timescale, you don't have to address the question of appropriateness or quality of response. In fact, Conference, we would suspect that there are many occasions when a detailed response demanded within the 4-week period would not be possible because of the complexities of the issue and the need for research, etc. And what the movers are proposing is that, namely after that 4-week period, there should be outside advice, unspecified, should be engaged. The mover has not given any interpretation of what that advice would be, but we could speculate that it could involve consultancy, and it could involve the hit squad of either staff from other departments or activists being parachuted in to do some form of performance appraisal of the offending section. I asked you to consider conference. What would your response be if your employer was proposing the same method? I'm quite clear in my branch that we'd be reaching for industrial actions procedures. Why should we accept a different response or expect a different response from the staff trade unions? One final point that I would like to stress, conference, is that this motion has the capacity to undermine lay democracy and lay control and branch democracy. It has several references throughout the motion to members being able to contact and get direct responses from full-time staff at HQ and regional offices, almost unfettered, and with the role of the branch and lay activists marginalised or at best unclear. We don't think that's the proper direction for a union that's lay controlled. For all those reasons, we ask you to oppose this motion and amendment. You will have the opportunity to deal with the many complex and rightly placed positions regarding service delivery within the strategic review. I ask you to take up that opportunity and please oppose these proposals. Thank you.
901, any speakers? No speakers. The mover, do you want to reply yet, or do you want to save it for later? Save it for later. Good. Okay. All those in favour of Amendment 18901, please show. Those against? That is lost. 18902. It falls. There's no delegate speaker. 18903.
President Conference, Kay Barker from the United Shepherd Hospital branch, Yorkshire and Humberside region. Our branch wrote this amendment because we are increasingly fed up with members having to wait for benefits. Has Mabledon Place got an ever-extending excuse book? We didn't receive it. Are you sure you sent it? It's the UMS. It's been passed for payment. The computer's down. It's been processed. Did they sign up? Mrs. Who? These are some of the comments our branch and others have got when ringing Mabledon Place about some of our members' benefits. Our members deserve better, conference. We have discussed some very serious issues this week affecting members, but this is a grassroots bread and butter issue. Members who require help, particularly during bereavement, need our help. They need an efficient, quality service from UNISON, and that's what they deserve. Our members are fed up with the excuses, and I, like many in this hall, have had to justify this service to our members. We are supposed to be the largest trade union for the public sector workers, and it's time this union got their act together. The interim period is over, folks. We've had that excuse. How we deal with our members' claims is the shop door for our members. If we don't get that right, we haven't got their confidence. Members who submitted forms of accident benefit in our branch at Christmas still haven't received payment. I think it was excuse number 4. Even Saatchi and Saatchi would have trouble trying to market this accident benefit and death benefit if our members don't get their accident benefit when they put the forms in. So come on, conference. It's time we got our act together. This amendment and substantive motion is setting out the minimum standards our members should expect and deserve. I am appalled that the NEC is opposing this. These amendments, that means that the NEC haven't got the finger on the pulse. We are struggling in the branches. We are struggling to justify inefficient services at national level and can only assume, therefore, that these minimum standards will not be forthcoming in the short or medium term. So come on, conference, it's up to us to set the standards. Our members deserve it. Our members pay for it, and it's up to us to produce it. I move.
Platform speaker.
President, Conference, Claire MacArthur, opposing Amendment 189.3 and the main motion. Amendment 189.3 of itself is totally unobjectionable, is totally supportable. The problem is the branch didn't do what they ought to have done, put an independent motion up which could have been supported. Instead, what they've done is tacked it on to the end of a motion which cannot be supported. And that motion, as Chrissy Kermouche said earlier on, takes UNISON into the age of the Citizens' Charter. You've already adopted a motion this morning, motion 187, with its amendments, which instructs the NEC to conduct a major review of services at branch level, at regional level and at national level. And that review will be conducted within a trade union context, not in the sort of John Major Moulder management type of approach. The composite amendment to motion 187 that you adopted this morning says that there should be an emphasis on providing services in-house, particularly in respect to the provision of legal services and vocational education. The effects of the motion that are in front of you just now would encourage the opposite. It would encourage the externalisation of our services. Point 2 of the motion ties us into a detailed reply within 4 weeks. Well, conference, have you got any idea how long it can take to get the details, research case law, get counsel's opinion and reach a judgment in a legal case so you can provide a detailed response to members on a legal case? 4 weeks couldn't touch most cases, but the motion ties us into that, and it says that if we can't do it within 4 weeks, then send the case outside. Now, I think it's interesting that the same quality standards, so-called quality standards, aren't being applied to the outside contractors that the motion tells us to use. And maybe that's what's really behind this motion, what the motion is really about, forcing us to put services outside to profit-making companies and not to retain them in-house. I urge you to oppose the motion and oppose the amendments.
Any other speakers to Amendment 3? No. Do you want to exercise reply yet? Yet? Sorry, you're speaking? Oh.
Ben Culbertson, Exeter Health Conference President, Delegates. What the heck are we talking about here? How long have we got to get the message across? The UMS is in a mess. The finances have been up the spout, and by the stroke of a lucky tail, we've managed to get the thing back online. And yet we can't even provide a basic service to our members. Stewards not receiving membership cards. People not getting their magazine Focus. Come on. How do you think that people will feel when they can't even get a basic service like a welfare benefit? We're not talking about 4 weeks and having a direct answer on every single case. What we're saying that in the basic is this, that within 4 weeks we should be able to expect some answer from some senior officer at some point in time about some particular thing. Come on, conference, let's tell them. It's about time we got our act together. I have to go out to my members and say to my members, I'm sorry, I can't get an answer from Mabledon Place. I can't get an answer from Region. I can't get an answer here and I can't get an answer there. I should be able to get an answer. Pass this motion, pass this amendment.
Are you hanging on to your ready reply for a while? Okay. Platform speaker.
Conference, James Urquhart, NEC. I asked for some help this morning. I asked 2 questions, actually. I asked, can anybody give me some help with these motions? And the answer was no. I got the second question I asked was, what should I say? And they said, tell the truth. And then they called me back and they said, tell the truth with qualifications. But the trouble is that we are debating a specific motion. We mustn't listen to people who say, this is what we really mean by a motion. That's the whole point about qualification. It doesn't work. We've had it raised before. You can't qualify your own motion and say we don't mean it. It says a detailed response within 4 weeks. It says it go out to the private sector. Somebody mentioned Saatchi and Saatchi. I expect they're out there now with a stall waiting for 4 weeks from now when they can take over our services. Let's just take it seriously as it is. Let's not talk about what it might have been if someone had written it better. This is the motion as it is now. Just think about the health service. The massaging of figures in the health service, classic example, we will see everyone in 4 weeks. What that means is, while they're seeing everyone in 4 weeks, people are dying on trolleys because they're diverting the resources. That's the Citizens' Charter approach. Let's not introduce it into our union. Reject this motion and all the amendments.
All in favour of Amendment 18903, please show. Those against? It is lost. We now have speakers on the motion 189.
Colin Carp, National Power Branch. Colleagues, this is not about words, not about privatisation of our services, but about service to our members when they need it. We're a proud union with great traditions from all the partners. But I believe, and I believe, that our officers are generally good, and they certainly are in electricity. They give me, in the National Power, the service that I ask for. But sometimes they get things wrong. And that is when the strength of our union should really show, because it should have a system for telling our members what's going on, and it should have the courage to say when it's got it wrong, and it will put it right. I learned about the problems of this sort of thing when helping a group of ex-COSI and ex-NUPE members in South Wales. They work for a registered charity providing care in the community, residential care. These members have suffered and still suffer from increasing sexual harassment and bullying and victimisation by their supervisors. They feel bitter at the way their branch officers fail to communicate with them. You'll hear more about that from voluntary sector members. They feel even more bitter at their feelings that a full-time officer was either a friend of the management, because they were a charity after all, or he was incompetent, or possibly both. One of them, and I'll use first names on this, Pauline, in November 1994, wrote to Alan Jenkinson complaining about the service from a full-time officer and the service from her regional secretary. In January 95, David Pickin, one of our platform people here, wrote in reply saying he'd got all the answers. Nothing has been done since. In February, another of the members, Gaynor, wrote and complained further about her problems. That still hasn't been dealt with. Part of the problem they were dealing with on this sexual harassment was that the union wouldn't support them. A private solicitor put up $6,000 of its own money. The Equal Opportunities Commission supported them, but UNISON opposed and tried to obstruct them. That's part of their complaint. They won their case. They got a letter of apology from their charity. They got substantial damages. Alan Jenkinson hasn't even had the courtesy to acknowledge the letter telling him they won. That letter was sent in February, and Alan Jenkinson hasn't had the guts to say, oh, well, congratulations for winning your case. I'm still trying to investigate whether or not you've got a problem. Those are real issues for those members. Gaynor has now been driven out of the industry. She's now selling advertising on a commission basis because she can't get support against this crap employer. That's why we need a system. Those members have got to know what a complaints procedure is that exists.
You've got light, brother. Yeah. Nearly finished?
Right, thank you indeed.
Thank you.
I say, members, we need a procedure. We need to get something so that members can complain effectively and know what their rights are. Thank you.
Point of order.
Jane Carroll in Glasgow District, moving the question be put.
All those in favour of the question being put, please show. Those against? That's carried. Ready to reply.
Dawn Patterson, Gloucestershire County. The NEC thinks the strategic review will deal with the issues raised in the motion. We don't see why we should wait for that. The NEC also thinks the motion encourages members to bypass their branches and go to full-time officers. Heavens forbid. This is not the situation and our intentions. Branch officers have the same problem in getting services. And don't be put off by emotive talk about Citizens' Charter and Saatchi and Saatchi. What are the NEC afraid of? Support the motion.
Thank you very much. All in favour of 189, please show. Those against? It is lost. Well, if you want me to take up a lot of time from when my eyes are pretty good, I'll do that. But we don't really have time to waste in card votes unless they're absolutely essential. But I'll put the question. 10% of the members can ask for a card vote. 10%. Show me those who want a card vote. No. Yep. Thank you very much. Can we call Comp DD, please?
Conference, President, Bob Oram, Manchester City Council delegation. In the interest of progress, formally moving DD, accepting DD1, but urging Conference to reject DD2. We want a proper and serious review. It's ridiculous to suggest it could be done thoroughly with branches and regions and be implemented by September. Let's get this right. It's too important not to. Reject DD2, support DD and DD1.
Thank you very much. Mover DD1.
Sue Salzedo, Leicestershire, formally moving DD1 and withdrawing DD2.
Conference accept withdrawal DD2. Great. Thank you very much. Any speakers DD1?
Conference, Phil Richards, Haringey Officer Branch. I'll be very quick. Supporting the composite motion, I'd like to say that obviously UNISON boasts of having a wide-ranging, high-quality legal advice service. However, this is far from the case. If a member, whilst undertaking their duties, is defamed by the media or local councillor, he or she finds it very difficult to stimulate any interest or support from UNISON's legal service. Branch secretaries refer such cases to legal, hoping that wild, damaging, untrue statements about members will receive proper attention. But what happens in reality? The evidence goes to the legal department, who sits on it for over 2 months. The branch secretary receives a reply, and then correspondence starts between the aggrieved member and UNISON Legal. Even a year may pass, and UNISON Legal has not got its act together. What use is it then to receive a note from the head of legal services saying, I could telephone the solicitors for the newspaper or councillor and see if they will apologise? It's simply not good enough. Members deserve a far better service than this. I urge you to support.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? DD1? All in favour of DD1, please show. Those against? That is carried. DD. Any speakers on DD? Composite DD. Does the mover want to add anything? No. To the vote, all in favour of composite DD, please show. Those against? That is carried. Can you turn now, please, to composite LL, to be moved by the National Executive? Is it? No? No. LL, sorry.
David Egmore, Camden Branch, moving Composite LL, which is on the blue Standing Order Committee's report. On behalf of my branch, Kent County, Barnet No. 1 and Tower Hamlets District. This motion seeks to restore to branches the right which, prior to November last year, they had the right to seek legal advice and, where appropriate, legal assistance and action on employment cases by direct application to the legal department at UNISON headquarters. In moving this, we want to make three things clear. Firstly, we do not believe that the law has much of a role to play in the majority of employment disputes. Most of them are more appropriately handled through other traditional trade union methods: negotiation, representation, industrial action. Secondly, we do not believe that it's UNISON's job to provide solicitors on tap to individual members. We've all dealt with them, the people who think they should be able to pick up a phone and get a QC at headquarters to sort out any minor problem they have. But thirdly, we do believe that branches have to have the access, in appropriate cases, to seek and to receive professional legal advice where that is justified on individual employment cases. Can I read you out something? Some disputes at work cannot be resolved by negotiations. That is when you may need the help of UNISON's legal services, providing you with expert legal advice on employment law, and when necessary, representing you in tribunals and the law courts. That's the little silver guide which UNISON sends to all its newly recruited members. It's a promise which we make, and it's a promise which we are in danger of breaking. In November last year, a decision was taken without any consultation with regions or branches that branches would no longer be able to approach headquarters direct for advice on employment cases as far as the law was concerned. The letter went out from the Assistant General Secretary saying all such cases had to be referred to the regional service group head, and they would decide whether they should go to headquarters, and that if any applications were made direct, they would be referred back to the regional office, not even to the branch, and delays might result. What this means for my branch is that if we have an individual case and where it is clear that legal advice is required, I have to discuss it with the regional officer. The regional officer has to refer it in writing to the regional head of local government. The regional head of local government has to send a letter off to headquarters. After a duration of a certain period of time, the regional head of local government gets a letter back from headquarters, which he sends to the regional officer, who sends it to me. We'll make 2 points about that. Firstly, it causes delay, obviously, 4 months in a recent case, to deal with a case where legal advice was required, but was relatively straightforward. 4 months to get a 3-line reply. But secondly, and even more important, it's incredibly wasteful duplication. The member is not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. The regional officer is not a lawyer. The regional head of local government has got many virtues, but he's not a lawyer. Why do all these people have to look at these cases before we can before it actually lands on the desk of the people who should see it? That's one of the lawyers employed by UNISON headquarters. It's a completely unnecessary waste of time, effort, money and paper. Now, I mean, obviously the NEC are opposing this, and clearly we'll listen to the arguments. But can I say, one argument I've heard is that branches are too quick to refer cases to the legal department headquarters. We accept that that may be a problem, and I would refer you to point 2 in the composite, which says that branches should have the right, should be reinstated, to refer requests to headquarters, but they should also confirm in doing so that the regional officer, which is responsible for their branch, has been consulted, knows about the case, is aware of it, and basically agrees that legal advice is appropriate. Not that it had to go through this chain of bureaucracy, but at least that someone employed full-time by the union has looked at it. We believe that is a safeguard. We think the decision to remove that right of access for branches was wrong, and we ask you to reverse it by passing this composite.
Speaker.
Conference, David Buss, Kent County Branch. Like the mover, our branch believes that most of our members get most of their support and advice at branch level. Officers and stewards are able to advise and represent members on a whole range of day-to-day service-related issues. There are occasions, particularly against a background of constantly changing employment law, where it's not possible for either the branch or regional officers to give authoritative legal advice. In such cases, branches like ours have valued the access we had directly to the union's legal services, and it was with some dismay and anger that we received the 24th of October memorandum headed Improvements to Unison Legal Services from the Assistant General Secretary, Membership and Development. It's difficult to see how the removal of branches' direct access to legal services is an improvement. Having to refer issues to regional heads of service introduces a bureaucratic impediment, creating more work for regional officers who now have to refer the requests on and respond to the branch saying what they are doing with their request for advice, and also leads to delays for our members. What's more, it seems that not all regional staff have been kept fully in the picture, as we recently received a letter from a regional officer asking why we were referring our requests to the head of service. It's also led to a situation where another branch in our region had a member who had to report to the police on an employment-related issue, but were unable to obtain legal advice because they were unable to contact the regional head of service and therefore were unable to obtain the assistance of legal services. In the circumstances, they felt obliged to obtain legal advice from elsewhere. Our branch did not bring this motion to conference in the hope of absolving ourselves from seeking industrial relations solutions to the problems we face. We believe that we're careful ensuring that our requests for legal advice have been legitimate and checked out by experienced lay and employed officers of the branch. We're simply seeking to ensure that the needs of our branch and other branches like ours for legal advice are properly catered for without unnecessary bureaucratic impediment, and adding our voice to the protest against running the union by circulars. Support this composite, support our rights to access legal advice, and remember that there are other unions who vigorously market their legal services who are directly in competition with us for members.
Thank you very much. Point of order. Gone. It's disappeared. It's platform speaker. Platform speaker.
Thank you, President. Conference, Claire MacArthur, NEC opposing Composite LL. And the mover made reference to three main points that he wanted to make. The first was that he didn't believe, and his branch didn't believe, that the law had a major role to play in employment cases, that he didn't believe that solicitors should be on tap, but fair enough that there had to be access to a solicitor when it was necessary. Well, I've got to tell you, Conference, that might be what the mover and his branch consider. But I have to tell you that in the first year of operation in our union, the number of legal cases that the department had to deal with far outweighed the combined numbers in the three former partner unions. Nobody's quite sure why it happened, but it happened, it's a fact. And that's an issue, that's a situation that has to be managed. I think the other point that has to be made is whether the mover of the motion or whether his branch likes it or not, there are many branches, and the evidence is there to show it, who do not believe the same thing, who seem to believe more and more, unfortunately, that to deal with cases they should have almost automatic recourse to the law, not the type of trade union principles that the mover of the motion outlined. And yes, there was a filter system that's been described, put in. That filter system was designed, A, to ensure that branches could confirm membership and subscriptions, and in so doing, be aware that there was a request for legal assistance on the go, and to be able to provide assistance to their members because they knew of the case, which wasn't previously the system. And secondly, to create a situation where regional office knew that there was a problem and they could pick it up and deal with it if that is what was appropriate. I'm really pleased to see within the composite reference to the fact that what's called the helpline should remain, because the helpline was set up quite specifically to take account of the fact that you had different types of cases. You have ones which are relatively routine or which do not have pressing time problems. that can be dealt with through the procedure that's been outlined by reference to the branch and the regional office, and you have a second, and we acknowledge that on the legal panel in the National Executive Council, the second type of case which is urgent. That is why the helpline was set up, to allow branches to have direct access to the legal department for assistance. The way the motion is being presented seems to suggest that that is not the case. The facts are the facility is there. The details of it were sent out in a circular to all branch secretaries on the 24th of October last year. Conference, oppose the composite, use the systems, but use them appropriately.
Thank you, Claire. Point of order is back.
Alison Blair, Strathclyde Region Branch, moving that the question be put.
Well, I know there's a big, long row here of people who wish to speak on this subject, but time is a presser, but I'm not making the decision. You're making the decision whether you've heard enough to decide that you want to vote on this. All those in favour of putting the question, please show. Those against? That is carried. Right to reply.
The NEC speaker seemed to me made 2 points. First of all, that there was a large increase in the number of cases, and we accept for that reason that there has to be a filter. And the filter we propose is that branches should be required, when submitting cases to headquarters, as it says in point 2 of our composite, to confirm that they have consulted the regional office. And that will therefore take care both of the need to filter, and we accept that, but also of the need to ensure that the regional office is aware of problems in branches. Can I say, I think what's been said from the platform sounds fine if you're sitting in Mableton Place. It doesn't actually accord with the experience of branches actually out in the country. If branches are abusing that process, there is an educational job to be done to ensure branches are aware of the sort of cases in which it's reasonable to go for legal advice. But you can't do that educational process by basically building a wall around the legal department and making it difficult for genuine cases to get through. That simply discredits the entire system. The decision that was taken last year is wrong and it should be reversed, and I ask conference to do that by passing this composite.
Thank you very much. The National Executive Committee is opposing this composite. All in favour of composite LL, please show. Those against? It is carried. Yep. Conference, can I just read a couple of notices to you at this point that are happening this afternoon. A fringe meeting on the TUC and TEX working together has been held at the Bedford Hotel in the Staining Room from 12:30 to 2 o'clock today. Chelmsford bus workers dispute. 105 Chelmsford bus workers, members of the TGWU, were sacked on the 18th of November 1994 for taking official strike action in a dispute about safety. Eastern National were trying to extend their driving stint so that they would have to drive for nearly 5 hours with no break. With the full support of the TNG, the drivers have been running a free bus service in Chelmsford, and where Eastern National have changed routes serving small communities and linking shopping areas, the drivers have maintained them. The company was forced to negotiate through ACAS and has made an offer to buy out the dispute. Unless and until it is accepted, the dispute continues. Chelmsford bus workers spoke at a meeting on Tuesday and asked for their thanks to be given to delegates and to union members, branches and regions for their support. Could I call motion 204?
Good morning, Conference and President of the Day. John Garside from West Yorkshire Water No. 1 Branch, moving motion 204. Conference, the Executive Council and senior officers, both national and regional, have been trying to improve legal services. This motion is saying keep up the good work. As most of you will appreciate, the difficulties in time delays by the legal department. That deals with the first part of the motion. With regard to the second part of the motion, our branch is concerned about our legal teams and the full-time officers when deliberating on unfair dismissal cases. It seems to us to require at least a 70% chance of winning a case before they take it up. That is unfair both on the member and the branch. Then branches have to help the members in the best way they can. We are aware of at least 2 cases in the water industry. One was the dismissal of the publicity officer of Severn Trent Water Branch, who was dismissed by Severn Trent Water for publications. The branch and the secretary, John Burner, supported the member and won the case through the legal system at great cost to the branch and the secretary. The other marginal case was that of our own branch member, Mr. Geoffrey Cushworth, of unfair dismissal. If all union's resources had been put behind the member, it could well have been won at the Industrial Tribunal. It was left to the member, with aid of the branch, to find and finance through 3 stages of law on a shoestring. At the first stage of the Industrial Tribunal, it was only lost by the chairperson not voting, and was with the efforts of a solicitor who came in at the last minute and we later found out had not much experience in employment matters. So we believe it could have been won if the research had been put in on the case. At the second stage of the preliminary hearing of the Employment Appeal Tribunal, they accepted a submission put by an ex-full-time officer of the union that there was a legal point. And at a full hearing, we lost, but the employers was not granted cost, and the report of the Full Employment Appeals Tribunal suggested there was merit in the case and was not dealt with correctly at the Industrial Tribunal throughout the case. I pleaded with the officials of the union to get back on board. We don't ask the union to back no-hopers, but we do now believe there was politics was being played in this case by employers leaning on the union to drop the case, or we would not be recognised, as UNISON was coming in at that point. Conference, you may have marginal cases in your branch in the future, so please back your members and support this motion. I move. Thank you.
NEC. President Conference, Ralph Murray, National Executive Council, asking Conference to oppose Motion 204. The motion has 2 parts to it. The first part on time limits, the National Executive Council has no problem with. We know there's been problems in the past. We've been working hard through the legal panel to put that right. Additional staff have been employed to assist with the problem, and hopefully, I can't give a cast iron guarantee on every single case that the two weeks time limit will be reached, but we're certainly working towards that. We have no problem with the first part of the mover's case. It's the second part where we have some difficulty. It's not clearly understood what the reference to industrial tribunals or the employment appeal tribunals means. If, however, it's a repetition of the claim that in every case legal representation should be provided in these matters, it's been found, and I can assure you at this conference this is the case, it's been found over many years that in the majority of cases regional or branch representation is not only appropriate but has been effective. I remind you, colleagues, that it's part of a regional officer's job specification to represent members. It is the view of the National Executive Council that regional officers are competent and are able to deal with representation of members up to and including industrial tribunals and indeed employment appeals tribunals. However, legal representation is only required where issues are particularly complex and problematic, or indeed where the case is likely to affect a significant number of members. Legal representation in any event is invariably provided for hearings at employment appeals tribunals which are being supported by the union. I would pick you up on one point, John, on the 70% rule. In fact, it's 50%, better than 50% chance for members with personal injury cases, and as I've also said, in other cases, it's whether it's likely to affect a significant number of members. On those basis, Conference, the National Executive Council asks you to oppose this motion. Ready to reply.
Thank you, Conference. Young Garside. I make these points in response. If employers' representatives of Yorkshire Water had to lean on the union not to take a case to an industrial tribunal, and when the member of the personnel department had 2 years ago said to me, if I said anything derogatively about the employer, then they obviously was concerned about their judgment, and therefore we were concerned that the union wouldn't represent us at that point in time. I accept the point that full-time officers do most of the IT cases locally, but they do take legal advice before going forward with a case. And therefore, Conference, when you have a member that is 17 years in employment and a clear slate and has proved of going through on this case, it was a marginal one, and if the 50% rule had applied at that point in time, I'm sure they'd have taken the case up. So what we're saying is, where it is a marginal case, then they should, and there is a chance, then give that member a chance and legal advice, and the full-time officer should get behind it. But I think there was politics to play in this particular instance, whereby UNISON was coming in. They said, look, if you take this case forward to an industrial tribunal, then it may go back for you in recognition of UNISON. And I think the part in the motion states about that. We shouldn't succumb as a union to being blackmailed by employers. And so therefore, Conference, I do ask you to support this case. It's about marginal cases. You could have marginal cases in your branches in the future, and if you don't support this motion, then you'll have difficulties. Thank you, Conference. Please support.
The NEC are saying oppose. All those in favour of motion 204? Those against? Would you do it for me again, please? Would you mind? Sorry. Yeah. Those for the motion? Those against? It's a card vote. I can't split you. Yeah. Where's the card vote thing? Where? Yeah, Maggie. What number is it? Card vote number 3. Card vote number 3. Delegates ready for the vote? Where is he? Bloody panic station. Should read this out, shouldn't Are collectors in their places?
1 second. Okay? Okay.
Okay. Card vote number 3 on motion 204. Please vote now. Is there anybody who hasn't voted? Please put your hand up.
In the corner.
Can I interrupt you? Is it correct that you advised conference this morning that Composite GG would be heard after 2:05?
No. We were told to come back when they wanted to move it. They haven't done so.
They want to do so now. Do you mean you want them to come back to you or to announce
Well,
it?
they'll have to come up with an ask.
They're going to do that now.
Ask for one more time.
Anybody not voted? Everybody's voted, I take it. I'm going to ring it a bell. The tellers, please now go to the room and proceed with the count. Conference, we can now carry on if you're settled. With motion 205. Is the mover of motion 205 available? Come on, 205. We can't hang about all day. Come on.
Conference. Jackie Burnett-Pitts, representing the National Black Members, speaking on the motion 205, legal representation of black members. I'll start again. Jackie Burnett-Pitt, representing the National Black Members, moving motion 205, legal representation of black members. Conference, in moving this motion, can I say firstly that we will accept the NEC amendment with a reservation. Conference, our reservation is not that we may not be able to do something, but the other way around. If the NEC does not implement this motion fully and properly, we shall return to the floor of conference. Conference, it is deplorable that the CRE had to write to the General Secretary indicating that the union must start to deal with the representation of our members properly. Conference, it is also a fact that rising unemployment figures show that black people are more likely not to be employed than white people. And when they are in post, they are 5 times more likely to be sacked or made redundant than their white counterparts. Black women are more likely to be in jobs which are at the lower end of the work collar. They're also more likely to be less paid. Conference, the sectors we cover have a tremendous number of such women. Many of these members require advice and assistance in order to improve their working conditions. The National Black Members Committee is pleased that UNISON has introduced training for regional officers in dealing with racial harassment. But Conference, our experience, the experience of black members on the grassroots, is one of despondency. They feel isolated, they feel hurt, demeaned and angry. Angry that the subscriptions they pay result in inefficient, ineffective, and at times negligent advice. Conference, as the barrier to compensation has been removed at industrial tribunals, it is only a matter of time when a smart applicant or employer makes us party to the case and hence liable to be sued. Conference, we also know of cases where regional officers are unable to undertake cases because they are not trained, they do not understand the issues involved relating to racism. They do not understand the culture of the applicants, hence their needs. And also, sometimes they are simply overworked. The motion asks the NEC to ensure that legal advice can be received by black members directly from the legal department. It further asks the legal department to accept referrals from the regional and branch black structures. Conference, it's only right that at a time of unprecedented attacks on the black community that we aim to ensure that they are protected at work. To do this, Conference, we need to ensure that the legal department can deliver the commitment of the union to servicing members generally and to eradicating racism specifically. It is also essential that UNISON undertakes a programme of training using black lawyers who are aware of such cases and cultural and language needs, to train all branch stewards and officers on the handling of cases involving racism. Conference, we need your support to ensure that shop stewards are trained and are trained to be effective. Go back to your branches and find out if your stewards have been trained, and if they have, when. Get the demands into UNISON for the courses. We should make it a condition of being a steward that training is compulsory, but one step at a time. Conference, let us move forward and ensure that the Black Members' Conference does not have to repeat this exercise again. Conference, I move.
Thank you very much. Amendment 01, NEC.
Thank you, President. Bob Reevy, National Executive Council, moving Amendment 205.1 on behalf of the National Executive. In the light that the mover of the motion has accepted the sentiments, I'll be extremely brief and comment only on the reservation that the mover indicated that we may not be willing to fully implement the matter. Take it from me, the NEC are committed. This will be a priority issue for the new NEC next week. If there's a reservation at all, it has to be only in the budgetary sense, and that's why that part of our amendment is there, that resourcing is required to fulfil the obligations of this motion, but we do intend to see it through. I move.
Thank you, Bob. Any speakers on 01? 20501? No. All in favour of the amendment 20501, please show. Those against? That is carried. Any speakers on motion 205? Do you want to reply to anything? Move it? No. To the vote, all in favour of motion 205, please show. Those against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Point of order.
Ash Doby, West Midlands. Excuse me, conference, my voice is going. Conference, I wish to move suspension of standing orders 233 to move Composite GG to be debated now. Conference, given that the NEC policy is remission, there is likely to be only one speaker for this, and consequently it will only take a few minutes of your time. Conference, please support this.
Conference, just so as you got the gist of that, the NEC has changed its position from opposition to a remit. The mover of that suspension of standing orders is indicating that he thinks there'll only be one speaker and it won't take much time. Just to let you know, if he lets me down, I'm going to move it. Next business, that is. Right. All in favour of suspension standing orders to hear GG, please show. Those against? Yes. It will be heard. Call. Mover GG.
Deborah McElveen, Oxford City Local Government Branch, moving formally that we accept remittance on Composite GG. I'm moving this formally on behalf of the movers of the Composite, which is National Black Members Committee, Hackney Local Government and Oxford City. This motion is very important. Fair representation is in our rule book and we want to get it enacted. That's why we're agreeing remittance. At the moment, self-organised groups have representation on branch committees, on regional committees, but at the national level of this union, one of the most important levels, we haven't got a voice. Now, we hope that through agreeing this remittance, that we will actually have some action and see the rule book implemented. Thank you, Conference.
Thank you very much. All in favour of Composite motion GG, please show. Oh, sorry. Remission, I mean. Accepting remission. Please show. Great. Anybody against? No. Thank you very much. That's done. Call motion 206.
Helen Knott, Leicestershire County Branch, accepting remittance of this motion, but with one condition. We brought this motion to conference because of the lack of clear guidance about how to respond to requests for representation from alleged harassers. We want to offer the fullest support to members experiencing harassment, and we do not wish to support actions which constitute harassment. We need clear advice about what sort of representation should be made available and who by. There are some problems with the motion and the NEC are asking for it to be remitted. We are in agreement with remitting the motion if the NEC can assure us that they are dealing seriously with this matter. We need guidelines to be issued to branches. We don't want it to be lost somewhere. If we can receive that assurance now, then please support the motion being remitted. Thank you.
Is the NEC going to give them that assurance? Anybody? Jenny?
Jenny Cock, NEC, in giving you that reassurance, I'd like to say that there is a working party which is considering all these issues, and a report will be prepared for your consideration. I'm very pleased that you agree to have this motion remitted, because then it will allow them to complete their work unrestricted. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favour of the remit? Against? That's carried. Conference, can we now move back to the annual report, pages, membership services, pages 30 to 35. And I'll ask Kevin O'Brien to introduce that section.
Kevin O'Brien, National Executive Council. Just formally moving, brothers and sisters, the annual report of membership services. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions?
Sorry about that. Kit Armstrong, Birmingham Local Government Number 1 branch. The question I'd like to ask is with regard to legal services on page 31. I'd like to ask the National Executive to answer this. On external use of external solicitors and firms of solicitors in UNISON, I just want to know what criteria they use for the choice of the firms and whether there's some kind of checking out whether they're equal opportunities policies and things like that.
Claire McCarthy.
Claire MacArthur, NEC, attempting to answer the question. I have to say that we didn't get notice of it. It would have been useful to have done so, and we could have answered it more fully. And we will answer it more fully direct to the branch when I've had the opportunity to consult on it. I will provide to the branch in writing the criteria for the selection of external solicitors, but what I can say is that not only are the external solicitors checked out on grounds of quality, they are checked out on the basis of their practices and policies in relation to equal opportunities. I will give more details in respect of the criteria in a written reply to the branch.
Thank you. Next question.
Chair, Conference. Ken Robinson, Liverpool City Local Government Branch. I stood before you 48 hours ago and asked certain questions on the annual report in respect of some financial aspects of disciplinary hearings which are being taken against members within the Liverpool City branch, 4 stewards who are facing disciplinary action for supporting unofficial action over alleged racism. At that time, the General Secretary came and he said he hadn't had advance notice of it, despite the fact that he's been requested of finance committees nationally and by NEC members, and he refused to give us an answer to the questions of how much the legal costs have been incurred by UNISON so far. Right. I'm standing here today not only as an individual UNISON member, but also representing 6,500 members of the City of Liverpool branch who contribute £400,000 in subs every year to this union, and we want an answer to these questions. And what I want to know is the full cost of all the legal fees incurred to date in the disciplinary action against those members in Liverpool. And I want the General Secretary to come out here and confirm that he hasn't had advance notice from those NEC members. He hasn't been asked these questions before, and he hasn't been asked them in subcommittees. And a third question I'd like an assurance from the platform, seeing that the General Secretary won't be here next year, and be it Bickerstaff or Bannister, whoever's going to be the General Secretary, because there'll be somebody here from the Liverpool branch next year who will be asking them questions, and what I don't want is the platform passing it back and saying, oh, that was all Alan Jenkinson's responsibility, we don't know what's happened, we'll put the blame on him. And also I want to know how I'm going to go back, if there's no answer from the platform, and explain to those members in Liverpool why, when 4 of those people who are being disciplined, 2 of them have been elected to one of the most senior positions in the branch, one of them being the chair, so we can see where the allegiances of the Liverpool branch lie. How I'm going to go back and say, I'm sorry, on 2 occasions I asked the questions at conference and nobody gave me an answer. Thank you.
That was quite a long question, wasn't it? Claire MacArthur, NEC, can I say that 2 minutes ago we were handed a piece of paper saying there would be a question in the annual report under the legal section, and it was going to ask what looks like something here, 8 questions. Now, the person who asked the question didn't actually ask the same question in speaking, or questions when he was speaking that are on this piece of paper. But apart from that, 2 days ago, a question was asked in respect of all of the costs associated with the Liverpool situation. At that time, conference, you were told that all of that information wasn't here in Brighton. All of that information resides in files, in Mableden Place, and in computers within Mableden Place. It is not possible for that to be transported here and the work to be done on it within 2 days to give you an answer. In conference, frankly, 2 days ago, you accepted that explanation. The question has been asked formally, a response will be given formally to the branch, and I'm given an assurance from the platform that that will be done. I cannot answer in respect to the General Secretary in terms of what questions he has or hasn't been asked out with this.
Next question. I'm not opening a debate.
Can I just come back on one aspect of that, please?
Yeah,
right. Since I come up here 48 hours ago, the General Secretary hasn't had the courtesy to contact me, who asked the questions, any of the Liverpool delegation, or anybody at all to do with the branch, as to when we're going to get an answer to them questions. And it shows the contempt that the General Secretary has got, and I think it shows the contempt that he's got for this conference hall.
Next question.
Conference, good afternoon. Good morning, sorry. General Secretary, good morning. Chair, good morning.
Thank you.
Seeing as though the General Secretary has had so much difficulty to gather this information in such a short time, and we had an answer the other day, which was, well, it's so quick and so sudden, I can't do nothing about it. Well, fine. We said then it wasn't quick and sudden. The question's been getting asked since last year, and I know from the Mooder conference that people are saying, hang on, this did get asked last year, we remember it now. No matter how much this is being tried to be blanketed down, people remember it. So I am now saying I'm going to give the General Secretary a get out. I am now requesting that if the General Secretary or his staff have not got this information on hand now, that this conference demands that the General Secretary get the information together within the next fortnight and send the results of that information to every branch so that the membership will be publicly aware of how the money of this union is being spent by this General Secretary and this NEC against the membership wishes.
Thank you, Delegate. We hear what you say, but you can't move a motion while you're asking a question. So we hear what you say, and no doubt the General Secretary.
Chair, can someone confirm that the 4 members in question have gone to the Tory Commissioner for Trade Union Rights to obtain funds to attack this trade union?
Oi. Yes. I haven't called you yet. Yeah. Okay, let's not have a bun fight now. We're doing all right. We're doing all right. Next question, please. Yep.
Adrian Davies, Barnet number 1. I have a question under UIA on page 33. I gave written notice of a question under this section, but I don't feel the NEC statement this morning has answered it. I want to ask, how come the NEC decided the companies exhibiting downstairs were sympathetic to UNISON when one of them is in direct competition with UIA, our own company, where NEC members sit on the board? I call on next year's NEC to act honourably on membership services, which are very important in this union. Bob Reevy has said the current NEC approved a new strategy last Saturday on membership services. Would conference have ever found this out if I hadn't asked my question, and why haven't branches been consulted on it?
I'm going to try and say something. Bob Reevy, National Executive. I refer my right honourable friend to an answer I gave earlier. I've always wanted to say that. I don't know why. The point that I tried to answer earlier is there has been some genuine confusion, and I can only apologise for that to this delegate and a number of others about the status of the exhibition area at conference. There appears that the responsibility has not been accepted by anyone. I will stand here and take that and apologise for that and say that next year that will be remedied. The strategy I referred to earlier, the ordering of the area is under the control of the Standing Orders Committee. When I made the answer earlier on today, they said, but we didn't know that. So there is a genuine problem there, and I accept that there has been confusion. I can only apologise. And in terms of the strategy, that work will be done for next year, and you'll see a much better coordinated and clear in terms of its policy exhibition area.
Next question.
My question was about the membership strategy. Can I have an undertaking that will not be implemented until it's come back to a democratic forum of members?
The National Executive Council is a democratically elected forum of members, and I won't be one of them after the end of this week, but that's by the by. Sympathy, come on, Strathclyde, sympathy. The strategy has only just been agreed and developed. It will be communicated. I think I can give that commitment. It will be circulated round so you know what it is. And in the normal coordination processes, through the branches, through the regions, you can comment back on it. It's a job of work that has to be started immediately. We can't consult on every single issue. You elect these people up here to do things on your behalf. You've just done so in the last few weeks. Please let them get on with it. And I'll be watching them as well as you.
Next question.
Chair, Conference, Mel Page, Suffolk Police. Page 33. Can the EEC confirm the UIA decided at its AGM this week not to pay to commission to branches anymore? And on what basis was that decision made, and why weren't branches consulted, as it's another cut in their income?
It's difficult, well, I can answer the question, but it's difficult to see what Conference's role in this one is. The UIA is a registered company owned by its policyholders. Notice of the annual general meeting of UIA was circulated to all branches in advance in accordance with the rules of that organisation, including a full copy of the annual report and the agenda. Where that recommendation was made, yes, you are correct, colleague. They have decided not to continue the payment of commission to branches. But I think that's a matter that was, I say, on that agenda. It's a constitutional separate body to this one. And President, I don't think it's a question for debate here. I'm being honest in saying they decided that, but you or your representatives were circulated with the necessary information to go to that meeting on Monday night this week and discuss and challenge that point. But we can't do it here.
Next question.
Gloria Rees, Neath Local Authority District Branch, Chair, Conference. Addressing a question to the NEC. Can the NEC confirm whether all retired members are entitled to death benefit in accordance with Schedule B, Paragraph 6 of the Rulebook, as previously enjoyed by former NUPE members before vesting day? End of question. Conference. As a delegate from Wales, I wish to deplore the attacks made upon Derek Gregory, the Regional Secretary, particularly as he does not have the right to reply.
Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin O'Brien. And down but not out, and like Bob, I'll be watching the new NEC next year. In relation to the question of about retired members and death benefit, it's actually in the when you retire you should still stay active pamphlet. It's very clear. Former NUPE members who at vesting day were paying a reduced subscription to protect their death benefit must continue to make those payments if they want to continue to protect that benefit. With the exception of former NUPE free card holders, no member who has retired since vesting day is eligible for death benefit.
Conference. I'm absolutely disgusted by this disclosure because this was never discussed with the amalgamation of the new union, and it's such a grave issue that it should have come back to grassroots and should have been discussed. I don't mean a joke. It's a lot of money that women, we're in the majority of women in this union, part-time workers who've been members of this union for many years. It was a change of rule and it should have come back to us.
I hope the new NEC takes note of your comments. Yeah, good luck. Any other questions? There is.
Chair Conference, Betty McKinnon, York Hill Branch. I've looked in vain through these pages and see that there's no mention of members' cards. Now, the membership card is part of the service. You need your card for very many things to get some of these services, leisure and so on. Even in our conference arrangements there, if the conference goes into closed session, you'll see that you need your card in the visitors gallery if you want to stay here. It also says on the back of your card that it must be signed and carried at all times and quoted when services are required. Now, mine is dated 93/4. I'm still waiting for 95, and so are my members. Some of my members discarded their cards at the end of 94, thinking they were going to get another one, so I'd like to know why there is no mention made in here. Thank you.
Bob Reevy, Human Sacrifice, on behalf of the NEC. The answer, colleague, is they're in the post. And the reason they're not in our section of the annual report is it's not my fault. It's actually a finance and admin matter, and it really should have been asked of Lynn Evans in her section of the report. But they are in the post.
Yeah. With those few asides, will conference accept report pages 30 to 35? Agreed? Thank you very much. Conference, I'm under pressure to read this out to you, so I'll have to do it, I think. The Trade Union Federation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, President's Council of Tuzla District Trade Unions. Dear friends, for 3 years the people of Bosnia-Herzegovina have faced a barbarous attack aimed at dividing our people and partitioning the country into ethnic ghettos. In Tuzla, the workers have stood firm in defence of our multicultural way of life. Our unions make no distinction between Serb, Croat, Muslim or anyone else. But we cannot continue to resist this attack without international solidarity from the working people of Europe. If multicultural Bosnia is defeated, can there be anywhere in Europe that is safe from the racists? The Tuzla District Trade Union Committee are organising a convoy which is leaving Britain on the 24th of July. We ask your organisation to circulate our appeal, collect food and money and send your own trucks. We need you all to support an undivided people against those who wish to herd people into ethnic concentration camps. Let the people see that they are not alone in defending the rights of workers to live and work together in peace. Yours sincerely, Frederica Sijurek, President. Yep. Can we turn to motion 179? I can say that.
President, Conference, Sybil Williams, speaking on behalf of the National Women's Conference, and also moving motion 179 on negotiating priorities for women. And I'd like to say that we have also accepted the amendment from the NEC. Conference, I'm sure I won't have any problems or difficulty convincing you to support this motion, but we feel it is important to discuss the issues in this motion, and we want UNISON, through the supreme policy-making body, to reaffirm its commitments to achieving equal rights for women at work and in this union. The proposal in this motion will ensure that UNISON makes a reality of that commitment and that we will be good enough, not just for those of us already in the union, but also for future success of UNISON, because that's the way we will recruit more women if women members see that. UNISON is taking up these issues and is making space for women to participate. Then they will join our union. The aims and objects of UNISON set out in the rule book recognizes that we have to empower women to participate in the union so that UNISON agenda properly reflects the concerns of the membership, 2/3 of whom are women. This motion reminds us that to do that, we can't just sit back and wait for those women to rush into membership, to take up these elected places, to take on management single-handed. We've got to make UNISON relevant to those women. We've got to make it inviting to women. And once they've joined, we've got to support and encourage women to become active in the union. We need to invest in our women members through training and education and through the self-organized structures. And believe me, that investment will bear fruit. If you give women the space, the support and the encouragement to become active in the union, they will come forward to join and participate in UNISON. And we will ensure that the negotiating agenda is relevant to us, the women in UNISON. So what is a negotiating agenda relevant to women? Well, conference, it's an agenda which tackles the issues raised here in our conference agenda. The major concerns are to achieve equal pay and equal pension rights, to achieve equal rights for part-time and temporary workers. A woman's agenda is quite clear that a statutory minimum wage is essential to tackle the evils of low pay and exploitation. A women's agenda insists that a policy to achieve full employment must address the need for childcare provision and parental and carers leave so that women as well as men can have the right to work. A woman's agenda insists that things which used to be dismissed as not real trade union issues are stand on issues like violence against women and child support. Conference, these are the issues we have debated this week. UNISON has got good policies on women's rights and work in society and in the union. Let's make sure these policies are put into practice. Please support the motion. Thank you.
NEC to move the amendment.
Jenny Cock, speaking on behalf of the NEC, asking conference to support Amendment 179.1. I am pleased that the amendment has been accepted by the Women's Self-Organised Group. This amendment purely clarifies the motion 179.1. The Equal Opportunities Panel has been working with self-organised groups to achieve the development of women members, to encourage self-organisation and the promotion of women's issues. While we can itemise expenditure on women's organisation, we cannot possibly show all expenditure on women members in general, which is why the amendment 179.1 must be supported.
All in favour of Amendment 17901, please show. Those against? Speaker, is there? Speaker for 179. Take this one speaker.
Anne Howes from Luton Local Government and also member of the National Women's Committee. First thing we did this morning was look to the Union's annual report, the membership development. Those of you who have read it, you did approve it, says the NEC recognises the guidelines alone cannot secure equal treatment in UNISON and is urging ownership of our equality agenda by each part of the Union. We, as women, want to do that. Please support this motion.
Thank you very much. All in favour of motion 179, please show. Those against? That's carried. Conference, I've got another couple of statements I must read out. Statement to conference concerning the death of Brian Douglas. UNISON learned with sadness and anger of the death of young black Londoner Brian Douglas, who died on the 8th of May of a fractured skull after being arrested by police armed with the new American-style batons. Brian is the first person to be killed following the introduction of these batons, but it was only the latest black person to die, having been taken into police custody. We note with grave concern that black people are overrepresented among those who die in police custody. UNISON offers its sincere condolences to Brian's family and supports the call for a fully independent inquiry into the death of Brian Douglas and for those responsible for his death to be brought to justice. The NEC will ensure that UNISON's concerns are conveyed to the Home Office and drawn to the attention of UNISON-sponsored MPs and will consult with Lambeth Branch on how best to pursue these objectives. This is a message to me from the Standing Orders Committee. Joy Gardner. We are appalled by yesterday's acquittal of the police officers charged with killing Joy Gardner, the Jamaican woman in London who overstayed her visa. Joy was killed in front of her son Graham as a result of being bound with several feet of tape round her mouth by police officers. Like the family of Stephen Lawrence, the family are now left to take civil action against the Home Office for damages to get justice, the legal costs of which are likely to be enormous. Conference extends our deepest sympathy to Joy's mother, Myrna Simpson, and sends a message of support to the family's campaign for justice. Conference stands adjourned at 2 o'clock.